coming through? I think I am. I'm going to repeat that just in case I didn't come through. If your child has ADHD, you've probably done everything by the book. But what if the book is missing the most important chapter? Or the book's outdated? Or the book is incomplete? Or the book is just plain wrong? Okay, so doctors' visits, behavioral questionnaires, specialist appointments, you jump through every hoop, and what do you get? You get a label and a prescription. But here's the real question: why does your child have ADHD symptoms in the first place? Okay, traditional ADHD testing isn't designed to actually uncover what's causing or exacerbating ADHD symptoms. It is built to diagnose and medicate. But here's the problem: a diagnosis alone doesn't fix anything. And that's why functional lab testing is changing the game. So instead of just looking at symptoms, these tests actually dig deep into the hidden biological factors that could be making ADHD worse. So today, in this live training, I am going to pull back the curtain. I'm going to discuss the key differences between traditional ADHD testing and functional lab testing. I'm going to talk about the 4 best functional lab tests for ADHD, and I'm going to discuss how functional lab testing helps you create a personalized approach for your child. So if you've ever walked away from an ADHD evaluation feeling confused, feeling frustrated, or even hopeless, I can tell you I was there. Stay with me, because today we're going to go beyond the surface and we're going to learn what you learn here could actually change everything for your child. Now, guys, if you are tuning in, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, what your name is. Give me a wave to make sure that I'm coming through okay. I actually didn't even check my microphone. I think I'm on the wrong microphone. Now I'm on the right microphone. So let me know in the comments if that sounds better. Now, for those of you that don't already know me, I'm Dana Kay, board certified health and nutrition practitioner. I work with families to help them uncover the underlying stresses that are really fueling ADHD symptoms so they can really support their child naturally. But I want to see who's ready to get started. So guys, give me a yes in the comments if you're ready to get started, and to make sure that I'm coming through okay, because I can't actually hear and I can't actually see any comments. I do like to get that feedback to know that it's coming through okay, but I don't know if it is. So let me know. Oh, I can hear. You're coming in from Southeast Washington. Hello, hello. I am in Seattle, Washington. So thank you for letting me know. I am not too far from you. And it's a beautiful day, isn't it? It's amazing. Now, look, when parents suspect their child has ADHD, the first step is usually to visit the pediatrician or a specialist. But what actually happens during traditional ADHD testing? Not, hello, thank you guys from Colorado. Thanks for giving me a thumbs up. Now, when they're doing the evaluation, they're focusing on symptoms. They're not focusing on what's happening inside the body. Now, at the first visit, first, you probably get a parent and teacher questionnaire like the Vanderbilt or the Connors rating scale. Let me know, guys, if you guys have kids with diagnosis, did you do that Vanderbilt or the Connors rating scale? You might also have clinical interviews where the doctor asks some questions about symptoms, maybe watches your child for a little bit. And in some cases, you might have neuropsychological testing like IQ testing or attention span tests like the TOVA. Now, these tests tell you how ADHD symptoms are affecting the body and the brain, okay? These are super helpful because they give you a diagnosis, which is the first step to getting support. But they also fall short. And this is something that a lot of parents of kids with ADHD don't realize. For example, traditional ADHD testing only diagnoses ADHD. It doesn't explain why the symptoms exist in the first place or why they are suffering so much from them. Traditional ADHD testing also ignores gut health, gut-brain connection, nutrient deficiencies, toxin exposures, and typically only leads to symptom management like medication instead of actually addressing those underlying stresses that are going on in the body. Now, I just want to say I'm not against medication. There's definitely a time and place for it. Um, and so now, sorry, I was just saying someone's 14 and I tried this about 13 days ago. I am not sure what you tried, Levi. I hope that you are okay. Probably just work with your parents to make sure that whatever you're doing is helpful. Now, but what I was going to say is you're told medication is the only option. But what if I told you that ADHD symptoms could be dramatically improved without relying on medication first? That's where functional lab testing comes in. Functional lab testing goes deeper than traditional testing. So instead of saying, yes, your child has ADHD, the functional lab testing actually asks, why does your child have these symptoms in the first place? Okay, so they analyze nutrient deficiencies like low zinc, magnesium, iron, those sort of things. It looks at gut imbalances like bacterial overgrowth, C. diff, yeast, leaky gut. These tests also look at food sensitivities. You know, certain foods trigger inflammation, making ADHD symptoms worse. So these tests can help us identify which foods are causing issues. And these tests can also look for toxin exposures like heavy metals. It can look for mold. It can look for pesticides. So instead of just managing ADHD symptoms, functional testing helps you correct the underlying issues, and it leads to long-term improvement. And here's what's really cool. Many kids who go through functional testing see huge improvements in focus, in behavior, in emotional regulation without relying solely on medication. So let's go over the 4 best functional lab tests that every parent should know about, and I will answer questions after that. Now, there are hundreds of functional lab tests out there. But in my experience, there are 4 foundational tests that are the best starting point. They look at the entire body without sort of casting the net too wide, because you could cast the net so wide and you could end up having to tackle so many things at once, and it's just too much for a kid to do all at once. So my 4 go-to foundational tests I find are the best starting point. They look at the entire body without casting that net too wide, making them sort of cost effective and targeted, so families, can really see what those real answers are. So I'm going to break them down for you. The first one is stool test. Now, what if I told you that your child's ADHD symptoms might not start in the brain, but they start in the gut? Okay. Now, in fact, the gut produces about 95% of serotonin and 50% of dopamine. And that's the same brain chemicals that control focus, mood, emotions. So what that means is if the gut isn't functioning well, the brain won't either. And many kids with ADHD have underlying gut issues that contribute to their symptoms. Things like yeast overgrowth, that candida. So someone was talking about candida in the comments, and yeah, tartaric acid can mean both mold and candida. It is a fungal overgrowth. It's colonized in the gut. Bad bacteria overgrowth, parasites, C. diff, inflammation in the gut lining. And so this test identifies all of those things. It measures that inflammation. It looks at digestion. It looks at the gut barrier function. And it detects sort of metabolical markers that are related to symptoms that our kids are suffering with. So it's a stool test. You can get that kit sent to your home. You can collect the sample and you can send it back to the lab. Now, the bottom line with this test is if your child's gut's not healthy, their brain function will not be healthy either. It will not be optimal. And that's why fixing gut imbalances can lead to major improvements in symptoms. So, Julia, I'll talk about where you can get that test done in a second. Now, the second test we use regularly is the Vibrant Wellness Food Zoomer or Wheat Zoomer. So the first test was a gut stool test, and this one is called a Wheat Zoomer. And a food sensitivity test. So food sensitivities, they cause chronic inflammation in the body, and that inflammation exacerbates ADHD symptoms. Many kids with ADHD are sensitive to gluten, dairy, soy, and other foods, but standard allergy testing often misses this reaction. Food sensitivity testing helps us determine which foods are triggering inflammation so we can remove them. We can improve the gut lining and then potentially reintroduce them later. Now, one of the things that I love about this test, this particular one, a wheat zoomer, it actually tests wheat and gluten down to the peptide level of the wheat and gluten, which most tests don't test for. They only test at the top protein level. So I've seen many different food sensitivity panels out there that will say, where will this be at a place? I will post this to my feed after on Instagram. So you can come back and watch it later. So this wheat zoomer tests it down to the peptide level. I've seen many standard food sensitivity testing that has said there is no reactive to gluten, but when I look at this wheat zoomer, it is so highly reactive down at the peptide level. And many kids with ADHD also have leaky gut. And with leaky gut, it's these tiny little gaps in the gut lining, allowing partially digested food into the bloodstream. And what happens, that causes food sensitivities because the immune system, it attacks these food particles, it leads to inflammation, and that inflammation continues to create holes in the gut. And when you've got leaky gut, this can affect the brain, those brain fog, inability to focus, behavioral symptoms. So if we don't address what's causing the food sensitivities, like the gut imbalances or the leaky gut, new food intolerances will continue to appear. And that's why this test is so important. It really helps stop the cycle of the inflammation, taking that food out, allowing the gut to heal, but also really seeing the level of the leaky gut. The wheat zoomer also has some really good leaky gut markers. So it's a really good bang for your buck. It's a simple finger prick test. We send the kit to your house. You send it back to the lab. So bottom line to remember with this test is that removing food triggers can lead to dramatic improvement in ADHD symptoms. But without this test, you're just guessing which foods are the problem. Hope this is making sense so far. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. I will come back and try and answer them if I miss any. Now, the third test I love, which is one of my favorite, is called an organic acid test. So someone asked earlier, does tartaric acid mean mold or candida? And tartaric acid is measured on this organic acid test. And so ADHD symptoms are often linked to what is going on in the body. It's looking at metabolic imbalances. It's looking at detoxification. It's looking at toxin exposure. And so the OAT test gives us a really detailed snapshot of how well the body is functioning at a cellular level. It looks for nutritional deficiencies. It looks at mitochondrial function, toxin buildup. It looks at mold, okay? It looks at neurotransmitters, your serotonin, your dopamine. It actually looks at over 65 different important markers. So it's super helpful, great bang for your buck. It's a urine test, and we send that kit to your home. You collect the sample and you send it back to the lab. Oh, thank you for sharing. You already read my book. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Someone's asking a question about something outside of supplements. Have you ever heard of a headband called Mendi? It's a product out of Sweden to help train the frontal cortex and pushing blood to the front. I have heard it. It's not the be all and end all. If your body is in a state of inflammation, have a think about it. Everything else is not going to be able to function at its best. So the best thing we can do is we can reduce inflammation in the body. We can heal the gut, so we heal that gut-brain connection. And then if you still need something like the Mendi, it's going to be able to function better because your brain is not on fire, your body's not on fire. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, the bottom line with the organic acid, it's one of the best bang for your buck tests because it gives you a big picture view of what's affecting your child's body and brain. Finally, the fourth test that I love for kids with ADHD is something called a cryptopyrrole test. Now, I will say that usually elevated levels of cryptopyrroles in the urine is detected in maybe 3% of the general population. I have tested over 1,500 families or kids, and I actually see it elevated in about 40%. So it is actually very common for kids with ADHD. And when you have these urine cryptopyrrole levels elevated, it can result in a dramatic deficiency of zinc and B6. Now, symptoms of pyrroles include poor tolerance to physical or emotional stress, poor anger control, mood swings, aggression, sensitivity to light or sound, tactile sensitivities, poor appetite, especially in the morning, and poor short-term memory, just to name a few. Okay, so if your kid is suffering from any of those, it doesn't need to be all of them. Elevated cryptopyrroles could be one of those reasons. It is a simple test. It's a urine test. We send the kit to your home, you collect the sample, you send it back to the lab. Bottom line with that test is that many kids with ADHD have elevated levels. And once we can correct those underlying imbalances, they feel more calmer. They feel less emotional, more focused, less irritable after correcting those imbalances. Now, you won't know if you need it without the testing. So we've covered the 4 best functional lab tests for ADHD, but I want to take a step back and compare them to traditional ADHD testing, just to do side by side. So what are the pros? What are the cons of each? I'm going to break it down. There are 5 basic differences to traditional ADHD testing. No, these tests are not just for children. They are for anybody. I focus on working with children. Yes, the cryptopyrrole is one of my favorite. So the 5 basic difference. Number 1, traditional testing only diagnoses ADHD. It doesn't explain why. Most parents go through traditional ADHD testing and end up with an ADHD diagnosis and a recommendation for medication. What they don't get is an explanation for why their kid is struggling so much. Functional lab testing can provide more of the answer to the why. Okay. Number 2, functional lab tests uncover hidden biological imbalances that traditional testing doesn't look at. ADHD is often linked to whole body health issues that traditional tests completely ignore. So, for example, many kids with ADHD have those gut imbalances, yet pediatricians never test gut health as a part of an ADHD evaluation. So, functional lab testing looks at the full picture, identifying imbalances that can be corrected naturally to improve symptom. A third difference, okay, is that traditional testing uses broad normal ranges, and that can totally miss problems. So most conventional lab tests, like the ones you might get at the doctor, like a blood test, they use really wide reference ranges. And that means that your child could fall into the normal category, even if they're not optimal for brain function. So, for example, a child's zinc level might be within the normal lab reference range, but it might be on the lower end. They may still experience poor irritability, poor impulse control, anxiety. And functional lab testing uses narrower ranges, more precise ranges, which allows us to catch early imbalances and make adjustments before they become bigger issues. Now, number 4, another way traditional testing differs from functional lab testing is that traditional testing focuses on symptom management, and functional testing focuses on long-term health and symptom reduction. And finally, number 5, one of the biggest differences between traditional and functional ADHD testing is, which I don't like, insurance coverage. Traditional ADHD evaluations are usually covered by insurance. Functional lab testing often aren't covered. Some may be eligible for HSA or FSA reimbursement. Despite its proven benefits, functional lab testing is considered alternative or preventative care by most insurance companies. And this is what makes my blood boil. Insurance will pay for medications to manage ADHD, but won't cover testing that could prevent symptoms in the first place. I mean, it's so backwards in my opinion. And so this means that parents who really want to get to the root cause of the ADHD have to pay out of pocket for stool tests, organic acid testing, nutrient panels, those sort of things. even though these tests can lead to life-changing improvements in kids with ADHD. It makes me so frustrated. So sadly, yes, functional lab testing requires an upfront investment, but for many families, it actually reduces long-term costs by eliminating trial and error treatments that don't work, reducing your dependence on expensive ADHD medications, improving overall health, and preventing sort of future medical expenses. So many families find that this testing pays for itself over time because their child's symptoms improve naturally, reducing the need for long-term medication and also long-term therapy. I can tell you, when my son was struggling back in the day, I mean, we would have to pay out of pocket like $200 a month for his medication. Plus, we were paying, out of pocket every week for therapy. Now we don't have to pay any of that. So you might be wondering, what is right for you? Traditional ADHD testing or functional lab testing? The answer really depends on your goals. Are you looking for a formal diagnosis to qualify for school accommodations? Or are you trying to find and address the underlying stresses of your child's ADHD symptoms? If you need an official ADHD diagnosis for school accommodations like an IEP or a 504, or if you need access to medication prescribed by a doctor, or if you want only insurance-covered therapy services, then traditional ADHD testing is the best place to start. But keep in mind, traditional testing won't tell you the why behind the symptoms. It will only tell you that your child meets the criteria for the diagnosis. So on the other hand, if you want to understand the why to your child's symptoms and address those underlying stresses, or if you're looking for natural alternatives, or if you want to reduce ADHD symptoms without relying solely on medication, then functional lab testing is the best option for you. Many families start with traditional testing and then turn to functional lab testing for deeper answers. And this is probably the best of both worlds. Now, we started with a traditional ADHD testing, then turned to functional lab testing, and now we don't need either, which is beautiful. Now, you might be wondering what's next. Where do I get these tests? If you've been sort of stuck in that cycle of trial and error, this could be a turning point for you. Functional lab testing is about, giving your child the future that they deserve. If you feel that your child could benefit, you could reduce those symptoms and they can benefit from these tests, or if you want to explore natural strategies to reduce those ADHD symptoms, we can definitely help. My team and I are here to help. This is what we do day in and day out. The first step for you would be to watch my Reduce ADHD Symptoms Masterclass. You can actually comment the word Thrive, THRIVE, right here on the training, and my team will send you a link to watch that masterclass. This masterclass will give you everything that we talked about, the proven strategies to reduce ADHD symptoms. You just can comment the word Thrive, THRIVE. We'll send you the link to watch. And then if you feel that this is the approach for you, you can book a call, a free call with our team. Alternatively, you can click the link in our bio and book a call with our team that way. And so, really, I feel that investing in testing today actually gives your child the best chance at thriving naturally, sort of without that trial and error. But I hope this training has been insightful and helpful. And now that you really understand the pros and the cons of both that traditional and functional lab testing for ADHD, if you've got any other questions, pop them in the comments. I will be moving this to the feed shortly. But again, just comment the word Thrive and we will send you a link to that, or you can go to the link in my bio or description to watch that masterclass. But that's it for today, guys. Hope you have a wonderful week and we'll talk to you soon.